Hello and welcome back to Sounds on the Couch. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest to you. We've got multi-instrumentalist Kieran Butterick. He is here to introduce the incredible music of Silent Eyes and the story behind his music. Silent Eyes released a self-titled EP in November 2020, and the EP has been likened to a genuine introspection musical autobiography. So let's bring him up and we can just start having our discussion. Hello, Keelan.
Hey, Karen, how you going?
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here, so to speak.
So would you like to maybe start by giving us a little bit of your background and where your music has sort of started from?
Yeah, sure. I think, I've played music a lot, just in different kind of projects and different, whether it's, part of musicals or part of different bands and whatever. But I've always kind of been writing for myself with an acoustic guitar. It always starts out with the acoustic. So, I think just through the years, it took me a while to just process what style I really wanted to introduce my music with, and I kind of, went through the process of going a bit too far sometimes. I had to, find a bit of a balance of what was going to work. And I guess when you're also the sole performer in a band, you kind of have to set yourself some limitations because otherwise everything's possible. And so I needed to work out what those parameters would be so that it was too hard to otherwise,
Well, I guess I'm very interested to hear a little bit more about how you went about setting some of those parameters. I guess it's very hard when, the world's your oyster and you can go and pretty much do anything. Like, how do you then determine where you need to set those parameters?
I think one way that I was able to find a good balance in the parameters was, ideally I'd like to get this, have the experience of performing it live with a band. So I thought, okay, realistically, that's a good framework to start. What would I like in that band? I'd like elements of electric guitar, acoustic guitar, keys. But I also, because of the acoustic guitar, I guess it's just with these songs, the writing wasn't influenced by certain effects or sounds. It was just the I guess natural sound of the acoustic. So I thought if I could kind of use that as a parameter, so everything was, without sounding lame, but less like organic, not heaps of technology, because I think that even just without having access to that sort of stuff, it was a natural. I just naturally gravitated to it, going, okay, well, it'd be really nice to have a piano as opposed to like working out synth sounds and getting lost in that. And all of the electric guitar tones are pretty, apart from reverb and a bit of drive and stuff like that. There's no crazy kind of overcomplicated production in that way. I wanted it to have the essence of just a natural kind of band arrangement in that way. I think, and not only that, it just makes it way easier when you get other people in to play the parts that you want. You don't have to, it becomes a lot easier for them to adapt and to learn the parts. So that was the basis for what my parameters were in that way.
Great. And I guess, you've got so many skills in regards to production and playing all these different instruments and, practically a one-man band producer, the whole shabam. So where did all those skills begin to start, and where did that passion really come from?
Yeah, I think it was, it started when I was maybe in my early teens. I'd always been singing and loving music, but it was something that, I just kind of tapped into, and I guess because my ear is something that I rely heavily on when I'm writing and singing and everything like that. And I always found it really difficult to. I just was never driven to sit down and kind of work out how to read music and work it out in more of those technical ways. I found it just a lot more fun in terms of discovering, like, shapes and chords and hearing a sound and going, oh, that's really cool. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's nice. And it was like, it just kept things really fun and interesting
Yeah.
without overcomplicating it and making it dry. And it just worked well for me to do it like that, because I think the moment I would attempt to, sit down, and I could hear it before I could read it, and it just would frustrate me, and I just wouldn't be able to do it that way. So
Yeah.
in that way, with my year, I guess, it took me probably until my teenage years to get exposed to lots of different music and bands. And yeah, I just kind of happened to stumble upon the Foo Fighters and Dave Grohl, and just tracking back through his musical life. And when I got to that first record of the Foo Fighters, that was the one I really connected with. And then I learned that he had recorded all the instruments and played everything, and it was just a really comforting thing, as well, to know that he couldn't read music and couldn't, and he just did everything by ear. And I guess being in such a small town, with not a bunch of musicians around, not going to see gigs, like it was a very insular world. And so I part of me was like, it felt like to be able to do music, I had to, know how to read and write music. And I guess that was such a relief when I stumbled upon him. And then I just really connected with, just his style. And he was a huge influence on my early, days as a musician. And then I just wanted to, things as I could. So it was fun. It's like a puzzle,
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, there's a lot of musicians, I think, as well, that now, in the past, maybe they've learnt classical music, whether they've gone and learnt classical piano or something that's very much based on what's in front of you. And a lot of musicians are actually now trying to learn that skill by ear, because it does give them so much more freedom. So I guess, you do, well, you've had
I
to
think,
put in those parameters, you've got that
yeah,
advantage in a
it's
way.
worked for me. I mean, I'm sure I'd be a way better musician if I actually, sat down and tried to learn some theory. That would probably make me a way better player. And even though I can play instruments to a standard, or that is good for me, it doesn't mean that I could just slot into any other band and be like, play piano and bass, and they'd be like, no, you're not good enough for it. So I found something that worked for me, but which is what I really need at this point. So
Yeah, no, that's great. So in November, you've released your self-titled EP, Silent Eyes. Would you like to tell us maybe a little bit about what led you to, first of all, release an EP, but what was sort of behind the release of the music that was on the EP?
sure. So I guess, funnily enough, the music was recorded and everything was finished in 2018. And so I'd been sitting on it for this whole period of time, and basically just I wasn't at a place, with my mental health, that I was really able to approach releasing something. And I didn't, so I was kind of holding on to it, waiting. I was also living back in Walker, and it just, so I just felt disconnected from, where I should be or where I wanted to be releasing something. So yeah, that in turn, just having something for that long sitting on your kind of shoulder was not a good thing as well. You know,
Yeah.
what am I waiting for? What am I waiting for? And so, you know, I kind of hit the ground running at the end of 2019, playing shows, and just having recently moved to Newcastle that year, it just felt good to do that. And then obviously I had, you know, momentum and looking at 2020 and going, yeah, this is going to be great coming into January. And then, you know, obviously things kind of stalled with COVID. But then it just kind of got to the point, and I thought, in some ways, you know, I still hadn't had a band. I hadn't been able to, you know, formulate a band to be able to play it live. And it just got to that point, and I thought, well, you know, if people are all at home and listen, you know, they've got nothing else to do, it also takes the pressure off trying to get a band together at this point. And
Yeah.
I thought it just would be a good time to release it, and also get me out of a bit of a funk at that point too, just because I was down
Yeah.
about not being able to release it. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
that's not true. I can do that. So it was good.
Yeah. So how
In
did
some
you?
ways, a little bit anticlimactic in the sense that I, you know, not having any shows lined up or tours, or, you know, like that felt weird to just be like, oh, here it is, guys. And then kind
Yeah.
of just having to wait and see how everything played out with COVID. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it feels good to get it out. That's for sure.
Yeah. So did you feel like it was a bit of a weight off your shoulders when you did get that out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of musicians, you know, when they actually come to the release of their music, you know, they're pretty much at the point like, well, they've heard it so many times, they're kind of sick of it themselves. But they're like, I just need to
Yeah.
get it out, like, you know. Um, and yeah, it was a really relieving process, and it just broke down a wall that, um, you know, it was a big deal. I'd built it up too much, having that much time with it, and it just became like this huge thing
Yeah.
to release music. And having done it with a band and bandmates, you have that camaraderie and encouragement and excitement of like, yeah, we're doing a thing. And by myself, it was just a little bit more like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and you know, so it felt good.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And I mean, um, yeah, well, I mean, the songs on the EP, what do they mean to you in themselves? So, I mean, what inspired you to create each song that you chose to put on there?
Yeah, okay. I was inspired a lot by the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Okay.
Um, that soundtrack is something that I've, you know, it's such a good soundtrack. And
Yeah.
there's, you know, gospel hymns and blues, and,
Mm.
um, you know, it's a very, that music, I guess, has an element of, it works well in a film because you can just, it kind of just takes you on a journey visually as well. So that, for me, is that a pooch?
Yeah. My
No,
dog's on the run.
yeah. So yeah, the first track, Homeward Bound, was um, inspired a lot by that. And then Ocean Blues was a period of time when I was living in Sydney, and just there was, yeah, a lot of, you know, I was just feeling a lot of pressure, and that was lyrically, it was just about kind of venting about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, The City is also that'd be the most significant song in terms of a catalyst for this actual EP existing.
Yeah.
I showed that to Alex Wilson, who's the guy who produced it and mixed it. So we worked together in doing those things. And yeah, I had met him through my other band, really, and just
Yeah.
playing shows and chance meeting. And yeah, he you know, he kind of knew what it was like to kind of struggle along, and again, just being a musician trying to do things by yourself. He was like, mate, I'd love to, you know, if you want to show me some stuff and I can give you advice. And And when I showed him that, he was like, cool. And that made him go, I'd really like to be able to work with you to be able to bring these songs to life and, help you get this done. And so that was a pivotal song in that. And that just, the lyrical content is just more reflective of, when you're feeling overwhelmed and just want to kind of have a clean slate and start again. And
I
so
think it's so important for people as well right
mm,
now, trying to sort of figure things out as things are
yeah,
changing with COVID. I think,
yeah,
it is a message that it's a really good, timely thing to bring out for people.
yeah. Well, the songs are pretty like I always write from a personal perspective. I like some elements of keeping things not necessarily obscure, but I like the idea of you know metaphorical lyrics and the things that kind of can be interpreted different ways. And but yeah, it was a very very personal kind of experience. And I'm not writing about going out and partying and hitting the rock and roll is all rad and nothing like that. So it's a more somber, melancholic kind of feel. But it's sad songs are really fun to sing, and so it just kind of they feel the best to sing. So it kind of makes me sound all like gloomy and but yeah, it's just a nice feeling to kind of sing in that way. But
Yeah.
and yeah, I think all the other songs were just also wanting the songs that I had on the EP to be slightly different in their. I wanted there to be a continuity between the songs in terms of you could tell that they were done by the same band, but I also just wanted to introduce different elements. Some would be a bit more rocky, some would be a bit more solemn, and some have big builds, some are like, and that just gave me a good platform. I thought that would give me a good platform for my next release, because if I wanted to lean more towards something, of that kind of style, it wouldn't be like this crazy change. So there'd always be like a connection to, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So talking about future releases, do you have much in the works to be be released anytime soon?
Yeah, so it's a funny kind of thing. I think getting the release out is really great. I'd like to do. Um, I find like live streaming, I'm not particularly drawn to in terms of performances. I just feel I'd rather create a film clip or something that people can watch and enjoy at any time that they want, rather than something that they have to be there in the moment. And I just feel like it'd be a nicer way to do that. So I'd like to, without being able to perform at this point, I'd rather be putting a bit of time into that. In terms of more releasing of music, I've got a lot of songs kind of, I could get that ball rolling again. I probably wouldn't be doing anything super soon. But yeah, I feel playing shows is a huge reward. Like, it's the rewarding part of releasing music. It's not just sharing something and being like, hey, I did that. But the ability to go out and play shows and meet random people is such a rewarding experience. And you just get, it's not validation, but it's like connection, and it's
Interaction.
yeah, and that really, and it's also encouraging, because you don't expect people to come. Like, some people have big egos and they're like, yeah, we're gonna pack this. I'm like, I always just keep my expectations a bit low, but it's
Maybe as time goes on, that can build though.
Yeah, exactly, and then you
Yeah.
get surprised and you're like, "Wow, there's
Yeah.
way more people here than I thought," and that's like, and then you go, "Damn,
Mm.
I can't wait to get back and, I
Yeah.
want to share more with these people because
Yeah.
it's a really lovely thing to hear people going, "Oh, I just love this
Mm.
song. I connected with it this way and that way," and,
Yeah.
so, yeah, without that element of, um, the releasing of the music and then having that, it's kind of like I said, it's a bit anticlimactic, but, I feel a lot. I'm in a way better position
Mm.
um, than I was this time last year in just terms of how
Yeah.
how can I release music? Like it just felt, like I said, it
Yeah.
just felt like this huge wall, and you
Mm.
know, there's a lot of self-imposed pressure and
Yeah.
perfectionist feelings, and so now that I've done it, I was like, oh, well, that was easy
Yeah.
and doable, so I should probably do that again soon.
It's
So
the
it'll be nice
next
to
step, not
reconnect.
so scary. I
Yeah,
think, it's amazing to sort of hear about with COVID. I mean, there was obviously so much negativity and difficulty that came out of COVID. But there's also been so many stories of, people that have had to sit down and reflect and be able to figure out things in a different way. And I think
mm.
that, yeah, you're one of those stories. It's amazing to hear.
Oh, thank you. It's
Yeah.
it's just another interesting thing, I've felt completely uninspired during COVID. So if it wasn't for like the push of the release,
Mm,
that was good just to reconnect me to music because I just felt
yeah.
so disconnected. So some artists were like pumping out songs and just like,
Mm,
it's interesting to hear that how
mm,
others have been really productive and others have kind of struggled. And I was just kind of having a bit of a chat with a musician called Bats in
mm,
Melbourne, and she was just saying like that she hadn't felt inspired at all, and
mm,
it's just kind of it also because people are just surfing this wave, and
mm.
some are crashing and tumbling, so others are, weird
Yeah.
analogy, sorry, but it's kind of a nice thing to hear people just being honest, and
Mm.
you don't have to be absolutely killing it at all points of
Oh,
the time,
yeah.
like humanizing the element of struggling. And
Yeah, and I think it's about recognizing as well where you're at for you.
yeah,
Just because
yeah.
somebody else is in a different place doesn't mean that you need to be in the same place.
Mm.
Thank you so much for sharing that as well. I just wanted to ask you as well, for any artists that might be watching this, any emerging artists that might have watched, heard about your story a little bit. Is there anything that maybe you could pass on to them any advice that you might be able to give them along their journey?
In terms of releasing, like, or
Or just anything in regards to
yeah,
their
I think
process?
one thing I always struggle with, and I continually struggle with, is comparing myself.
Mm,
I look at, I think social media has this capacity as well that really just, if I didn't have to be on social media, I wouldn't, because I just, it can get really depressing sometimes where you're just constantly fed all the best elements of people's lives and, hey, I'm doing this,
mm,
this, this, this. And if you're just not in a state where you can, if you're just not traveling great, that's like, you just feel worse, and
mm,
part of music is promoting and sharing all the things that you're doing. So that's just like, it's just something that you have to do
mm,
as part of the game. But in the same way, yeah, just I think realizing that your timeline is completely different to everyone else's. Everyone's got their own ways of approaching things. Everyone has completely different backgrounds, and you know, um, and also I used to beat myself up about time
mm.
and time getting away, and particularly when I was sitting on a release for 2 years, and that was just, a wasting all this time. And sometimes you think that you're wasting the time, but it's, it turned out to be the best time for me to release it
Mm.
because, I just couldn't do it before. And that's okay to realize that, you can do things when you're ready, and it's probably best to do things when you're ready and not
Mm.
something, sometimes you'll never be ready, but there's always going to be time which is best for you. So it'd be one, don't like beat yourself up, be kind to yourself. Two, try, comparing yourself just doesn't help.
Yeah.
Like you can take, pointers and, take things from people and be like, oh, that's a cool thing that they're doing. But don't think that just because they're doing that, you need to be doing that. And if
Mm.
you're not doing that, then you suck, because that's not true. And I think if you just do that and also focus on why you like playing music and the feeling that you get creating, because it's so easy just to get, sucked down a wormhole of, oh, again, social media, and be like, okay, I've got to be doing this, and like I've got to be, you know, and it can very quickly, you lose perspective on
Mm.
the actual joy and the connection that you feel when you know, when you can just sit down and write music and create it. Like there's a reason that you do it, and it makes you feel good, and that's why you started. So just
Yeah.
that'd be my points. Remember those things.
Yeah, no, excellent. And I think that's great advice. It's something that so many people do struggle with. And so, before we finish up, is there, or well, where can people find your music if they're looking to have a listen or follow you
Yeah,
on social media?
sure. So I've
Mm.
got music on all of the big platforms, so to speak, Spotify, YouTube. Um, yeah, there's all those streaming sites. Also, Bandcamp is. I only have digital content there at the moment, but I'd really like to get some physical copies. Not many people like CDs, but I'm looking into vinyl and other things. Bandcamp would be a big one, but also Instagram and Facebook. The site details for those would probably just be under Silentized Music off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's how you find me. I'm
Oh,
around.
excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we finish up?
It's just been really lovely chatting, Karen. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me. Yeah, I couldn't. There's nothing off the top of my head at this point, but yeah,
No,
thank you
great.
so
Well,
much. It's been really
thank you
lovely.
so much for coming on today.